Bismillah. Dear friends, thank you for being here. This morning we had so much beauty and so much intensity. I don't know if I can go through that kind of intensity again, heart-wrenching beauty and insights into the fitra of the human being. So this afternoon, I hope we will enjoy some of Rumi's words, but also have an insight into what he brought us. And I offer this to you as something that's applicable. Just as the Quran belongs to all of humanity, Rumi also belongs to all of humanity. I was given the theme by Sheikh Fadlallah, how to be Rumi today without culture. And this has been the question of my life, actually. One of the things I've been reflecting on is the meeting of East and West, or Middle East and West as I know it, and what this has brought forth. Because my own American mentality and approach to life, typical of my own culture, is one of freedom of choice, lack of coercion in every aspect of life. Recently I was having a conversation with a woman from India, and she said, I think America is the best country in the world. And I was shocked, because I said, you really think that? With our foreign policy, etc., etc. She said, I'm not talking about that. She said, but I lived in California for 3 years, and I experienced complete freedom to make my own life. She had come from a village in India, and even now, living back in India, she's really, she says she really doesn't have a lot of freedom. There's so many expectations put upon her by family, by neighbors, by society. And even though she doesn't believe in the things she's expected to do, she does them anyway, because the force of coercion around her is that great. And my own experience is that, especially in California, where I lived for many years, if I were to put it this way, this seems to trivialize it a little bit, but choosing Islam and choosing Islamic Sufism is almost a lifestyle choice. You can think, well, what do I want to be? I can be anything. Of all the things I can be, I think being a Sufi would be the best. And of course that led to Islam, and people might think I would be crazy for choosing that in my own culture, but I know why I chose it. At the same time, this choice involves an encounter with a tradition, with a revelation, with a discipline, and there's a tension between these two aspects. And sometimes when you bring two foreign elements together, something happens. There's a flash and something new is produced. I think we got a hint of that from hearing Jamie this morning. Her education, this kind of school she's teaching at, was very much the kind of education I was also fortunate enough to have. And critical thinking and real dialogue and intellectual exploration was almost taken for granted. This is what we believe education to be. And when I encountered some aspects of the Sufi tradition, in Turkey and elsewhere, in Syria and many places, I saw that the pedagogy, the method of teaching, was different. It was basically, you sit there and you listen to the sheikh. In fact, recently I was in Bosnia, and I'd gathered a group of people, and we began to have what I would call a sohbet, a real spiritual conversation. And there was a gentleman there, a very respected gentleman, an educator, and a hero as well of Bosnia. And I invited questions, I invited dialogue, and he said, in Bosnia, we don't dialogue. He said, you sit in front of the sheikh until you yourself become a sheikh, then other people sit in front of you. We can't do that in the modern world, not only in the West, we can't do it anywhere really where people have had a real education. They're not satisfied with it. I've seen this in Indonesia, I've seen this in India, I've seen it in Syria and Turkey. It's time for humanity to step up to another level and to be in dialogue and to develop ourselves by being in this process of conversation, of dialogue, and of deep questioning. So my life has been for 35 years, both translation, which is, and I'm not a linguist, I don't really know the languages I'm translating very well, I'll admit. I rely on native speakers. But the spiritual vocabulary, I know something about. And even more than that, I have opinions at least about how English can be used to convey spiritual concepts in Arabic, from Arabic, from Farsi, from Turkish. So translation and all the issues around that, which span all the issues of culture, and how do we transcend culture, how do we get to the truth beyond language, and how do we get to the intent of the original message. That's been one of my concerns. And the second concern of my life has been spiritual education in a very practical sense. How do we bring this beautiful tradition, including the revelation of the Holy Quran, and the way of life that developed among Sufis, and the deep knowledge and wisdom that has been embodied, how do we bring that effectively into the modern world? So I've lived with these questions, and although my talk today will not primarily focus on those practicalities, because we don't have time for it, that really has been, if I have a calling, that has been it. And from the very beginning, my own teachers, especially my first Murshid, he encouraged the question of, if Mevlana Rumi were alive today, would he teach everything in the same way that he taught it in the 13th century? Or might he take a different approach? So this is a question we have held for more than 30 years. My own Murshid was the last of the people who were educated in the traditional tariqa system that the Mevlevis had during Ottoman times. He was a bridge between the closing of the Mevlevi tekyas and the Turkish Republic. So he was a young man and was one of the last people to undergo the 1,001 days training. That was the primary education for Mevlevis. So I had the beautiful privilege of being close to him during the last 5 years of his life. And though he was a man who lived in a very small world, he didn't leave Konya, Turkey, until very late in his life. It's only the last few years of his life that he traveled outside of Turkey. Nevertheless, he was a man of immense vision and breadth. For instance, when he did come to America and he began to share the Mevlevi path, the issue immediately came up. Well, shall we allow women to turn do the whirling ceremony with men and in public? He said, yes, of course. He had no hesitation to do that. People in my own order in Turkey are debating this question to this day, and not everybody agrees. His name was Suleiman Hayati Dede, and he somehow had an instinctive understanding that went far, far beyond his own culture. So the form of Sufism that came to us from Mevlana's tradition, I believe, is a kind of Sufism that is, while it has a beautiful culture, it's not strictly limited to that culture. I envy the life, and I have holy envy for the life of the old Mevlevi Tekyas. I have glimpsed parts of it as it continues today, and the beautiful adab, the beautiful aesthetics, the refinement of life, the consciousness of that life, the affection and togetherness and love that was embodied in that life. And for 35 years we've tried to bring that into our own culture. So we've taken the best, we try to take the best of a Sufi culture and bring it into our Western culture. But inevitably there are certain things that blend and interact and produce something new. We believe in a living tradition, that Sufism must keep recreating itself, and we believe that, we sense that what Mevlana Rumi represents is the same spiritual DNA that was in the Holy Quran, and took a new form when Rumi met Shamsi Tabriz, and continues with its own inheritance to this day to evolve new forms while preserving some of the old. We might ask the question, was the experience, the encounter between Shams of Tabriz and Rumi, was that in any way culturally defined? Was that a cultural experience, or was that something much, much bigger? A quatrain of Rumi that I love goes like this. To us, a different language has been given, and a place besides heaven and hell. Those whose hearts are free have a different soul, a pure jewel excavated from a different mine. So, those who follow the path of Tasawwuf have different concerns. On the one hand, there's no doubt that we have discovered, and I have discovered as an American, something that I thought I had left behind. I thought I had left behind religion. By the time I was maybe 16 years old, it seemed to me that the divine has no brand name, nor does the divine insist that, nor does the divine benevolence require an exclusive set of practices, rituals, and beliefs. So, to us, a different language has been given in a place beyond heaven and hell. At the same time, The surprise for me was to discover in that freedom to come to a revelation and a way of life that seemed to have some objective reality, but without resorting to any dogma or to claims of a monopoly on truth. So in a sense, there's two aspects to this. It's like light. Is it a particle or is it a wave? Well, it's both somehow. There's this immense freedom. The divine is very, very big. The divine is in every aspect of human life. The divine is in every religion and non-religion. It's the divine mercy permeates everything. But there's also principles, spiritual principles. We trust the Holy Quran. We refer to it. Every insight, every inspiration we have, we always check it with the Quran to see, does it make sense? Do we see it reflected there? Every time I've experienced something new, and I thought, where I don't remember reading something like this in the Quran, and then I look to it and I say, oh yes, there it is. It reveals itself. At the heart of Rumi's transformation, and at the heart of Sufism, is this encounter, an encounter that deconstructs the ego, the false conditioned self, that just tears the human being down to its essence. And this being at the heart of our tradition, and especially of Rumi's tradition, through his encounter with Shamsi Tabriz, that's where he experienced this tearing down dramatically. This is the essence of it. This takes us beyond the human conditioned self, which is the basis of culture. Culture is built from lots and lots of conditioned people doing conditioned things. And here we have a deconstruction of so much. I'm going to read you in a poem in a minute that will give an idea of what that relationship might have been like. Because Rumi is quite wonderfully honest about it. So this whole, in a sense, the origin of Sufism, and in this case the origin, there are many origins, but the origin for Rumi was his encounter with Shamsi Tabriz. Even though he came from a Sufi family and he was trained as a mystic, but something really big happened when he met Shamsi Tabriz. He was dead and he came to life. And that's the beginning of this ghazal, Morde Bodan, Zende Shodan. I was dead, but I came alive. I was all tears. I turned into laughter. The authority of love arrived, and I became love's authority. He said, "You're not out of your mind, not fit for this house." I became so crazy they tried to put me in chains. He said, "You're not drunk enough. Get out of here. You're not one of us." I got joyfully drunk. He said, "You're neither completely dead nor smeared with grief." I let myself be defenseless and was slain before his life-giving face. He said, "You're so smart, intoxicated with your own imagination and suspicions." I turned into an idiot, embarrassed myself, and left everything. He said, "You've become a candle, the Qibla of this gathering. There is no gathering, no candle. I'm less than wafting smoke." He said, "You're a sheikh, an authority, a celebrity, a boss. I'm not a sheikh, not a celebrity. I'm just a servant of your command." He said, "You have your wings and fancy feathers. I offer you neither. Wishing for true wings and feathers, I stripped away my own plumage. The new dominion told me, don't struggle so hard. Don't trouble yourself, since out of favor and bounty, I am giving myself to you. The ancient love told me, do not separate from me. I said, all right, I won't, and settled down once and for all. Be silent as a game of chess. Let the moves speak for themselves. Didn't the face of that king of the world, Shamsi Tabriz, finish the game? So this is where it begins for Rumi. This was his annihilation. On the one hand, it seems like humiliation. Shams was a really tough teacher. Shams used to say of Rumi, you know, Rumi has incredible beauty and some wrath. I have a lot of wrath and some beauty, but my wrath is more beautiful than my beauty. If I scream at a 70-year-old unbeliever, he becomes a believer. If I scream at a believer, he becomes a saint. Well, for some reason, Rumi fell in love with this guy. I mean, a love like I had for my Murshid. A love that just melts you and makes you weep. The spiritual way that Rumi brought was a new revelation of love. I really believe this. As immense as the rahmat that was brought by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as infinite as that was, this love became very explicit in Rumi's tradition. And it seemed to happen through a spiritual relationship which I believe to be a model for humankind, that was never modeled in this way before, never revealed to humanity as a possibility. But I'm happy to say I see it here. It was a mirroring between two God-conscious human beings, with neither one having superiority over the other. Yes, Shams was pure power. Rumi was beauty and tenderness. But each needed the other. Shams said, I was a stagnant pool until I met Rumi, and he got me flowing. This mirroring, this mutual and humble adoration which is in the name of God. It is a divine love. It is not a human love. It has nothing to do with personality, has nothing to do with attraction, has nothing to do with possession. It has to do with the miracle of two human beings in a sufficiently purified state that they activated something in each other and showed for humanity a way of spiritualization that is different from the relationship of a typical guru and student, or even many of the traditional models of sheikh and murid. In our tradition, the sheikh would call the murid brother or sister, not son or daughter. And even though we respect our sheikhs because they're in service to us, it's not a matter of superiority. So this possibility for the human being to encounter each other in this humility, gratitude, and love is the key to a spirituality that humanity has not fully realized yet, but was modeled by Rumi and Shams. And it's an extraordinary love. Yes, it was there in Muhammad too, without a doubt, and it transformed that community. I can think of a time when a man came to Muhammad and he said, Ya Rasulullah, ever since I entered this deen, I've had nothing but trouble. When will I be released from this? And Rasulullah said to him, do you expect this deen to let you go until it's delivered you to your destination? Well, that same power and pull of love, in this case a love that is fully revealed, Mevlana put into a poem about Halaj. When Halaj found union with his beloved, it was right that it was on the gallows. I snatched a cap's worth of cloth from his coat, and it covered my reason, from my head to my feet. I pulled a thorn from the fence of his garden, and it has not stopped working its way into my heart. One morning, a little of his wine turned my heart into a lion hunter. It's right that this separation he helped me feel lurks like a monster within my heart. It's right that this separation he helped me feel lurks like a monster within my heart. That's the drive. No matter how intimate you are with the beloved, the power of this yearning has no limits. Then he says, yet heaven's wild and unbroken colt was trained by the hand of his love. The reason is learned and has its honors. It pawned its cap and robes for a cup of love. Many hearts have sought refuge from this love, but it drags and pulls them to its own refuge. One cold day, a bearskin was floating down a river. I said to a man who had no clothes, jump in and pull it out. But the bearskin was a live bear. And the man who jumped in so eagerly was caught in the clutches of what he went to grab. Let go of it, I said. Fighting won't get you anywhere. Let go of it. This code won't let go of me. Silence, just a hint. Who needs volumes of stories? Well, within this luminous, transparent tradition, we encounter, we also have many tensions that we learn to deal with. There's the tension between formalism and freedom, the tension between language and silence, the tension between spiritual authority and spiritual selflessness. Rumi's work, however, guides us in subtle ways through these tensions. It also provides, in his Mesnevi especially, diagnoses and remedies for the spiritual diseases of the heart. The whole of the Mesnevi really identifies all the ways, many ways that many pathologies that can enter into the spiritual process. Of many advices, I'm going to give you a little bit, and I also want to share a little bit of Rumi's thought about the Quran, since that's the overarching theme of this gathering. But he says, fools honor the mosque and yet seek to destroy those in whose heart God lives. That mosque is of the world of things. This heart is real. The true mosque is nothing but the heart of spiritual kings. The mosque that is the inner awareness of the saints is the place of worship for all. God is there. We have this beautiful revelation, and in my own experience I've discovered different ways that I've approached it. Well, before we get to that, Rumi also says, it strikes me as odd how those who have memorized the Quran are unable to penetrate the state of the mystics. The Quran is an amazingly jealous piece of magic. It contrives to say frankly in an opponent's ear what he understands but cannot comprehend or take any delight in. If it were otherwise, it would snatch him away. But God hath sealed up their hearts and their hearing. What a wondrous grace He has to set a seal on those who hear without understanding and who deliberate without understanding. God is gracious. His wrath is gracious, and His locking up is gracious. Yet unlike His locking up, His unlocking is a graciousness beyond description. Ask the meaning of the Quran from the Quran alone, or from that one who set fire to his idle fancy and extinguished it, the one who has become a sacrifice to the Quran, bowing low in humbleness, so that the Quran has become the essence of his spirit. Let me suggest at least 4 levels at which people approach the meaning of the Quran. And these I discovered all in myself. 1, as spiritual comfort food. 2, as furnishing for your inner room. 3, as a doorway. 4, as confirmation for your own experience. And these are not necessarily sequential. The Quran can be spiritual comfort food consumed by Muslims who want reassurance more than truth. Now Rumi's words. Everybody has his own way of doing things. The Quran is a 2-sided brocade. Although some benefit from one side of it and some from the other, They're both right, because God wants both groups to derive benefit. It is like a woman who has a husband and also a nursing infant. Now, you've got to hear this with a sense of humor, okay? Each derives a different pleasure from her. The infant from the milk in her breasts, and from the husband, from being her partner. People who take external pleasure from the Quran and drink its milk are infants on the way. But those who have attained perfection have a different enjoyment and understanding of the meaning of the Quran. The Quran can be the furnishings of your inner life, like a house of many rooms filled with valuable antiques. I've also experienced this. It's actually quite beautiful. You know, you live in these beautiful phrases, you think of them all the time, and they're like objects of beauty, and you surround your inner life with them. Another quote from Rumi from his discourses. Ibn Mukri reads the Quran correctly. That is, he reads the form of the Quran correctly, but he hasn't a clue to its meaning. The proof of this lies in the fact that when he does come across a meaning, he rejects it. He reads it without insight, blindly. He is like a man who holds a sable in his hand. If offered a better sable, he rejects it. We realize, therefore, that he does not know sable. Someone has told him that what he has is sable, and so he holds onto it in blind imitation. It is like children playing with walnuts. If offered walnut oil or walnut kernels, they will reject them because for them a walnut is something that rolls and makes a noise, and those other things do not roll or make noises. But the Quran can also be a door, a window on the universality of revelation, a portal to the infinite. Again from Rumi. God's treasure houses are many, and God's knowledge is vast. If a man reads one Quran knowledgeably, why should he reject any other Quran? I once said to a Quran reader, the Quran says, if the sea were ink to write the words of my Lord, verily the sea would fail before the words of my Lord would fail. Now for 50 drams of ink one can write out the whole Quran. This is but a symbol of God's knowledge. It is not the whole of His knowledge. If a druggist put a pinch of medicine in a piece of paper, would you be so foolish as to say that the whole of the drugstore is in this paper? In the time of Moses and Jesus and others, the Quran existed. That is, God's Word existed. It simply wasn't in Arabic yet. This is what I tried to make that Quran reader understand. But when I saw that it was having no effect on him, I left. Finally, a fourth possibility is for those who find in the Quran a confirmation of their own experience of spiritual wayfaring. Again from Rumi. There are some of God's servants who approach God via the Quran. There are others, the more elite, who come from God only to find the Quran here and realize that it is God who has sent it. We have surely sent it down, and we will certainly preserve the same. Surah 15, Ayat 9. The commentators say this is about the Quran. This is all well and good, but there is another meaning here, namely, we have placed in you a substance, a desire to seek, a yearning, of which we are the keeper. We will not suffer it to be wasted, and we will bring it to fruition. Above all of this, above these 4 different approaches, and I'm sure there are many more, I just want to say one more thing about the Quran's essential effect, and that is that it strengthens our heart. The Quran itself says this. If we had sent it down all at once, we would have destroyed you, but we sent it down in proportion, stage by stage, in order to strengthen your heart therewith. Finally, also at the heart of Rumi's tradition, and essential to our living it today beyond culture, is the understanding that love, divine love, is the greatest transforming power. And so much of his writing is about how to cooperate with that love. Love whispers in my ear, better to be a prey than a hunter. Make yourself my fool. Stop trying to be the sun and become a speck. Dwell at my door and be homeless. Don't pretend to be a candle, be a moth, so you may taste the savor of life and know the power hidden in serving. By love, the bitter becomes sweet. By love, copper becomes gold. By love, the dregs become clear. By love, the dead become living. By love, the king becomes a slave. From knowledge, love grows. He says elsewhere, love is reckless, not reason. Reason seeks a profit, but love comes on strong, consuming herself unabashed. Yet in the midst of suffering, love proceeds like a millstone, hard-surfaced and straightforward. Without cause, God gave us being. Without cause, give it back again. Gambling yourself away is beyond any religion or madhab. Religion, or let's say piety, seeks grace and favor, but those who gamble these away are God's favorites, for they neither put God to the test nor knock at the door of gain and loss. The essence of transformation, the beauty of it, I believe is captured in these beautiful words. And it's also the secret of being Rumi beyond culture. No mirror ever became iron again. No bread ever became wheat. No ripened grape ever became sour fruit. Mature yourself and be secure from a change for the worse. Become the original light you are. Thank you.